On today's Locked On Nationals, we'll be discussing day one of spring training as Davey Martinez met with your Nationals media today. And he said a lot of different things, but most importantly, he talked about your franchise shortstop, CJ Abrams.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I am your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as our show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And of course, search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course, over on YouTube as well for the video version of this said podcast. A little bit later on in today's program, we'll be discussing day one of spring training as Davey Martinez addressed the media today, or really yesterday at this point in time, as it is morning time. But Davey Martinez, he discussed many different things about the Washington Nationals, kind of a quick 2025 preview. He said a lot of different things, including he's looking to add at one position. And sounds like they will be adding at that later on today's program. But now, let's get into it. CJ Abrams. He could be primed for a big season in 2025. And I'll say that right here and right now. Davey Martinez was, number one, asked about many different things in his first press conference of 2025. But the one thing that really stuck out to me was the first few minutes was all about CJ Abrams. And a lot of people have been kind of wondering, what does the future hold for CJ Abrams? Well, number one, let's just get this out of the way. The Nationals, they view CJ Abrams as their long-term plan. And as they should, by the way. I'll just go out and say this. CJ Abrams should have gotten an extension this offseason. I think we all know why they did not decide to extend him with the way that his last season ended, but he was still an all-star shortstop for you. I think right now in 2025, CJ Abrams, this is going to be his year. This is going to be the year where we're going to need to see a breakout season from him. Again, we saw that in the first half, but can he do it for 162? He's now 24 years old. He's entering year 3, his third full season up in the bigs. This is now the time where he can actually break out. But as we were alluding to a little bit earlier on the show, Davey talked a lot about the 24-year-old shortstop, including, if you remember this, that he kind of said this earlier on this offseason, right after the season, saying that CJ Abrams is hard to get a hold of. And a lot of people are like, oh boy, with what has been happening, with how last season ended when he got demoted down to AAA, CJ Abrams is unhappy with the organization, and vice versa. The organization is unhappy with CJ Abrams. That is not the case. In fact, CJ Abrams, who also met with some media folks earlier this week down at spring training, he even mentioned that this is water under the bridge and that last year's demotion is a learning process for him. These are all the words that you want to see from, again, your franchise shortstop. The Nationals will go as far as CJ Abrams will go in 2025, and that is my opinion here. But as we were saying, Davey Martinez did speak on CJ Abrams, and number one, he mentioned that he got to talk with him a lot over the past few months. And this was earlier on when, I believe at winter meetings, when he kind of joked and said, CJ's hard to get a hold of. And everyone was like, oh my God, what is going on? This is the franchise shortstop, and he's hard to get a hold of. Something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. He talked to him a lot this offseason. And also, we got to learn today that Darnell Coles actually went down to Georgia to work with him one-on-one on his offensive skills. These are all positive signs for a big year for CJ Abrams. CJ has always had all the talent. In my opinion, these past few seasons, he has been your best Washington National. Now you have James Wood and Dylan Cruz, so he's probably going to get overshadowed just a little bit. But even having those two guys in the lineup right now, you're no longer just circling CJ Abrams' name. And opposing pitchers, they will be watching out for him, of course. But he's not just going to be the one guy with the red X on that lineup card saying, we can't have CJ Abrams ruin this game. You now have James Wood, who has the potential to hit 40 home runs this season. You have Dylan Cruz, who might be the best hitter in all of MLB farm systems up to this point. CJ Abrams is going to have a lot of room to grow here, and now finally has that sacred thing that all good offensive look for, which is protection. CJ is going to have his big breakout season that we have all been waiting for what seems like forever at this point. And also talking about this, one thing that has always kind of stood out to me with CJ Abrams is like his small frame. You've seen him each and every season kind of bulk up a little bit more. And last year, he was listed at 191 pounds. Well, Davey Martinez and CJ talked about this himself also. He is now up to 200 pounds and has bulked up, and it's not like bad weight. This is all solid muscle. CJ is starting to get it. And if the Nationals can go into this season with your franchise shortstop locked up, with your franchise shortstop being the centerpiece of this rebuild, then we are in great hands as far as 2025 goes. Now, when great hands, do I mean that we're going to win 90-plus games this year? No, I don't mean that. We all know this is not a 90-win team. You look at the talent around the team. It's good. They could win 80, 85 games and be scrappy like that, but I don't think they're going to win 90 games. I think that's unreasonable at this point. They're coming off back-to-back 71 and 91 seasons. You can't just think they're going to make a 19-game jump and win 90-plus games. That's just not how it's going to work this season. But with CJ right now, how do you not feel confident with him heading into 2025? You have seen it from him. You've seen the all-star play in which we saw for the first 80 games this past year, really the first 90 or 100. And the final 40 to 60 games were pretty bad. I've always said this, and I'll say it again. You can tell me Bigfoot is over there, but I won't believe that Bigfoot is over there unless I see it for myself. We have seen it from CJ Abrams. He's made an all-star team. He has proven to be an all-star caliber player. And I think right now, with where this organization sits, you have to think that Davey Martinez and Mike Rizzo believe in what CJ Abrams is and all the abilities that he has. He can steal 40-plus bases. He can hit 20-plus home runs. He can bat around 280. And he could be solid defensively as well. So let me ask you this. What makes you lack confidence in CJ Abrams? Is it the casino incident from this past year? I think that's wrong. Number one, we talked about it. It was a bad look for CJ. It was a learning experience for him in that past year. But one thing I can tell you from experience with talking with him multiple times in the past, CJ Abrams, number one, this kid's going to learn. And number two, I just said it, he was a kid, 23 years old, millionaire in Chicago, out at a casino until 6 a.m. before a 1 p.m. game. It's inexcusable, don't get me wrong. But he's going to learn. And I can tell you this, 100% fact. He is not the only major leaguer out there at a casino until 6 a.m. on the road. I'm not going to say a lot of guys are out there doing that, but I can tell you this much, it's not a little either. When you're 23 and you've got millions of dollars in the bank account, you're probably going to have some fun. So I am ready for this breakout season for CJ Abrams. What says you? What do you think? Do you think CJ is going to have that breakout year? You can let me know. Drop a comment in the YouTube comment section. Again, search up Locked On Nationals. Hit that subscriber button while you're at it. And let me know, what do you think about CJ Abrams in the year of 2025? You can drop a comment in the YouTube or tweet at me at RyanClary11. But next, let's get into some press clippings from Davey Martinez in day one of spring training. Before we jump into it, let's tell you guys about some of our new friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. And are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. And the fact that Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essentials amino acids, I do that right after I work out, and I think it is a great little snack as well, and it just tastes good. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein bunch. Just visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Again, visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And we are on day 2 of spring training at this point, but Davey Martinez met with the media yesterday, and I just went on CJ Abrams and why I am confident in him for the Washington Nationals moving forward. But Davey Martinez discussed a lot about the Nationals in 2025. Here are some things that I think are really interesting. We're going to get into some Cade Cavali stuff a little bit later on, but he talked about the starting pitching and kind of things that he needs in 2025. Number one, he mentioned Michael Soroka, who was one of the bigger signings from this offseason. He stated that Michael Soroka will start for the Nationals in 2025. So we kind of have been through this over the last week here. The Nationals have a loaded starting rotation as of right now. Not loaded in like they are stacked with pitching. I do think they're solid, but there certainly could have been more improvements done. You've got Jake Irvin and Mackenzie Gore. They're locked in. I also think Trevor Williams is going to be locked in as well. Well, now you're going to have to add Michael Soroka in that equation here. That's 4 starting pitchers already locked and loaded, ready to go. They are going to roll, at least we think at this point in time, with a 5-man rotation. That leaves it up, that 5th spot, for DJ Hurst. That leaves it up for Mitchell Parker. And also a new left-handed pitcher from Japan who's going to be coming in maybe today or tomorrow that Davey Martinez talked about. But that leaves some questions for the Nationals. And then also down the line, Cade Cavali. And then when Josiah Gray comes back from Tommy John. So the Nationals at this point, it's looking as if that Mitchell Parker or DJ Hurst will start the year down at AAA. That is an interesting development here. Because while I think that it's kind of hard to imagine either of those guys starting at AAA after what they showed this past season, my answer would be DJ Hurst should be on the Major League roster like immediately. Like it should be no questions asked. This guy, in my opinion, has a top 3 starter kind of aura around him for this year. He should be the guy to be that 5th starter. And even then, he should not even be the 5th starter, if we're just being honest. Soroka should be. And DJ Hurst should probably be your number 3 guy. I would be stunned to see Mitchell Parker over DJ Hurst. Something would have to happen this spring, in my opinion, for that to happen at this point. I don't think it will happen. I think DJ Hurst is going to be that guy. And again, I think Parker is going to be the odd man out. But these are things that we're going to have to watch for as spring training goes on, because Davey Martinez acknowledged that he likes the depth of this starting rotation. In fact, he said that he loves the depth of the starting rotation, and that was a big talking point here in his first press conference of 2025. So he likes the rotation depth. He also acknowledges that You've got other guys who will be coming at some point, like Harleen Susanna, possibly, Travis Sikora down the line. The Nationals are in a good spot as far as the rotation goes. But one guy that you will want to see will likely not be here at some point this season. That might be a frustrating part for this 2025 season, but you're just going to have to stick through it. Another thing that he acknowledged that he doesn't really necessarily have control over, but he acknowledged the fact that they are looking for bullpen help. And they also acknowledge that they are looking for, more specifically, back-end bullpen depth. He mentioned Jorge Lopez in that fold, who's already with the Nats, and as well as Derek Law. I know the Nationals really like Jose Frere, their young left-handed pitcher who we've seen over the last 2 seasons. But they are now acknowledging that they need more back-end depth in that bullpen. If only there was a guy that the Nationals just released earlier on this offseason who is still a free agent, Kyle Finnegan. It kind of makes sense at this point. And I think the more that I've thought about it, the more it just makes clear, obvious sense for the Nationals to bring back Kyle Finnegan. I think the reason why they let go of Kyle Finnegan was simply because they didn't think that he was worth the figure that he was expected to be paid in his final arbitration year. Maybe they could bring him back on a cheaper deal after Finnegan has kicked around the market. And again, you've seen Ryan Helsley, an all-star closer of the St. Louis Cardinals. He did not get as much money as what Kyle Finnegan was projected to get this season through arbitration. I think the Nationals could potentially look to try to sign back Kyle Finnegan. Now, I've been pretty harsh, I think, compared to a lot of Nationals beat reporters and other fans out there that really like Kyle Finnegan. He's fine. But if I'm trying to be a postseason team, he's not going to be my closer. Again, I think he's good for what you are. Like, you could trade him at the deadline and get something back, which they should have done this past season, by the way. But they did not. But I think having that marriage come back together makes a lot of sense for the Nationals moving forward. And also, some other bullpen help. Someone that honestly we have just totally forgotten about, Mason Thompson. He mentioned Mason Thompson is feeling good and that he is strengthening up. And if you are not familiar, or if you need to be reminded of who Mason Thompson is, he was someone that we got back in 2021 when the Nationals traded away Daniel Hudson and they got back Mason Thompson. Mason Thompson at the time was a relatively high prospect with the Padres, and they really liked him. They were not trying to give him up away for just nothing. Well, we got Mason Thompson, who at that time was pumping like 100, and he was looking like he could be a full-time closer someday. Well, we all know what happened. In 2023, he really blew up, and then ultimately got Tommy John surgery, missed this entire past season, and now he's feeling good, he is healthy, and he's strengthening back up, and he is likely to be in the bullpen later on this season. Is he going to be the answer at closer? Probably not. Probably not at this point in time. But I do really still like Mason Thompson and what he could bring. Now, similar to other guys with Tommy John, he is one of those flamethrower right-handed pitchers who's going to come in and throw 100. Does he still have that card in his bag at this point? That's a question that we just simply do not know the answer to at this point in time. But as we sit here today, again, talking about Mason Thompson and talking about this bullpen, I think that is going to be a very intriguing position group to watch as spring training goes on. At this point, I think there are more question marks than there are answers. Who's going to be the setup guy? Who's going to be the closer? We don't know at this point. And that is a question that Davey Martinez is going to have to answer at some point in time. So we'll see what the Nationals ultimately decide to do. Will they go out there and try to add another free agent? Will they go out there and try to add another veteran via the trade market? We do not know. Is it going to be Jose Frere? that would be my decision. But Davey Martinez, it's looking as if he just wants to see some guys pitch, see how the spring training goes, and then he'll decide who's going to be the closer, because you don't know, and I certainly don't know either. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Let's talk about this. Cade Cavali. What is going on? We don't know. We'll discuss that after this. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Let's talk about Cade Cavali, former top prospect, a former first-round pick. Once upon a time, we all thought that he was going to be the savior of this rotation, and he has yet to pitch in a game, in a major league game, since 2023 when he made his debut middle of August against the Cincinnati Reds. Well, Davey Martinez addressed Cade Cavali without even being asked. He was originally just kind of asked about the health of the overall pitching staff, and then he went on to talk about Cade Cavali. And he said that Cade is doing great, that he's healthy, but his workload is going to be managed at this point in time. And quote, "We don't know where he'll be." This quote could be taken a couple different ways. Number one, my gut feel is we don't know where he'll be as far as like starting this season. He's certainly not going to start up in the majors. He's probably going to start off in like low A ball, if I do imagine, and work his way back up through the minors, get up to AAA, and then eventually, maybe sometime earlier on this summer, we will see him up in the majors yet again. But he did acknowledge this, that the hope is that he will finish the season with the Nationals at some time. But it kind of brings me back to a lot of my original thoughts about Cade Cavali. Like, they did acknowledge that he is a starter. They did acknowledge that he is healthy at this point. But where is his strength at? Is he throwing 98 to 100 miles per hour? Is he pumping the strike zone like he once was early on in his career here in DC? These are questions that we have, again, a lot more questions than answers at this point. We don't know where Cade Cavali sits at this point in time and what the plan is going to be for him moving forward. Because you could tell me that he's going to be doing great and that he is healthy. I don't want to be the bad news bears over here, but we heard this last spring training as well. And this is what baseball is kind of like. It's a lot closer to hockey than it is in football when it comes to reporting injuries. And if you don't know what I'm saying, in hockey, they will just say that it's a lower body injury. Well, it turns out Tom Wilson had a torn ACL and no one ever said it. I'm not saying it's this, by the way. In the NFL, you get the information right away. It's reported on. He'll miss this amount of time, and that's really that. Baseball is somewhere in the middle, where they'll acknowledge that someone has Tommy John surgery, yet if there is a setback, you might not really hear about it, and it might just go dark, and then all of a sudden it gets lost in a 162-game season, and you don't really know all the extent of what has happened. That's kind of what happened with Cade Cavali this past season. You heard that he had the flu. You heard that he had dead arm. We don't know where Cade Cavali stands at this point in time. But I will say this, it's day one of camp. He acknowledged that Cade is doing great. He acknowledged that he is healthy and that they will manage his workload. And he acknowledged that he will finish with the Nationals at this point in 2025. So he's going to take some time to get rehabbed up, get strength back up in that right arm. And then we'll see him at some point, maybe earlier on this summer, maybe later on in the spring, maybe next fall. We don't know at this point in time. But that is certainly going to be a storyline that I will be watching. And I can tell you this, we'll be covering here on Locked On Nationals for the next month and a half until opening day here in DC, which again, only a month and a half away until you see your Nationals back at Nationals Park. And I can't wait. So thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. We will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.